Good evening and welcome to the Jinn and Tonic Show on this Friday, the 17th of November. Warm welcome to my co-panelists, Stop Spamming, and to all the viewers and to you who are watching. Can you just pop into the chat there that you can see and hear us clearly? And we're going to get started. Good evening, Stops. How are you, sir? How's your week been?
Yeah, great. And I just checked. Yes, you can hear. Everything's fine.
Perfect. Good show.
I've
So
had a
if you're
very
watching
short week and nevertheless quite busy. So it's always when you have a short week, when you have some free time, people are always on this thing, oh, you're not doing anything. Can't you do this and this?
Yeah. Yes, like sometimes you want your own time, not to be bothered or having to do other stuff. So yes, and welcome to everybody who's watching and commenting. If you would like to join us, I will give you the link to my Facebook profile. Friend me on Facebook. Send me a friend request link, and then I can give you the link to join the show. So let's get started as we often do, unless you've got anything else you want to say, Stops, before we get into crazy comments, and then we'll get into talking about these single miracle verses. Okay, we might have an earlier one today. I say that it almost never happens, but we'll see. We shall see whether in fact it does or not. All right.
Why does it work on yours? Why can't I do this?
Maybe you have to reinstall your computer. I don't know. I've obviously just upgraded, as I said, because my other laptop wasn't behaving.
Yeah, but remember, I used to be doing this all the time. No problem.
That's right. I don't know. Here's the first one. Ha ha ha. The stupidity of the commenters. Ha ha. And I responded, can you actually put forward a coherent argument to back up your claim, or shall we just dismiss your unsubstantiated emotional one-liner? I won't hold my breath for anything coherent that will be forthcoming. We get so many of these, don't we? These unsubstantiated opinions, you must get them in even, greater flavors of this. Never do they actually put a comment of, hey, the reason I think that you're stupid is X, Y, and Z. Now you've got something that you can actually, have a conversation around. But that might be asking a little bit much. Number 2. Rob and the Misfits. We're Misfits now. Is that a graduation? I don't know. Rob and the Misfits. Get a life, losers. Somebody else replied, why are you so mad? And then Abu jumped in. It's losers like you who, because of a complete lack of real arguments, use nonsensical rhetorical phrases like, get a life, losers. We are alive. We have lives. And we are trying to defend our lives against retards like you. Yes, Abu was obviously in a fiery mood there because he doesn't normally speak like that. So
no, that's normally my style.
No, maybe you're rubbing off on me. We just had a bad morning or night or something. But this sort of thing, say all that, say whatever you like, but give some reasons why you say it, please, if you're able to. So this was obviously with this video with Answer and Mo Hijab. Infinity is a unit of process which is not understandable or unlimited amount or out of mind thing, but exists. If infinity not makes sense, then destroy the basic of your so-called common sense, because all your senses of science is based on this infinity.
Absolutely.
That is complete gibberish. But I thought I'd throw it in there anyway. All right, moving swiftly on. It will be an honor to rip Sarah's head off. So this was a comment that came on that video with Sarah Bahi and Hamid had that altercation. So again, we've got the peaceful adherence of the religion, showing up again, as often is the case. Well, that's not the one we want. Here you go and bring up. Here's the last one. Answer, only accept absolute truth, but he thinks that there is nothing called absolute truth. So this was, I think, Answer talking to a Christian, actually.
Except.
Only accept. Yeah, only accept, yeah. Accept absolute truth.
But
you think there's nothing.
There is nothing called, you can call anything absolute truth. It doesn't exist.
If you go and watch that video, I'd have to, maybe I've still got it here that I can post it into the chat for people. If you go watch that video, at no point does Ansel ever say, I think it's this video here, so, call out to Content Over Everything. This is on Content Over Everything's channel. But if you go watch the video, there's nothing on there where Amsa talks about absolute truth. None of us claim absolute truth. How you can watch that video and then say that he only accepts absolute truth, it's like, are you just not paying attention? Or are you hearing something and then is it hitting your brain and completely changing what you've heard? It's mind-boggling sometimes. All right, so we'll just make this bigger. So here we go. So onto the single letter verses, and this we're going to have fun with, I'm sure. Stops, over to you, because I'm listening intently here as to what this all means.
Well, there's not that much. The funny thing is that if you open the Quran, you get the first chapter of 114, which does not actually belong in the Quran because it's only 7 lines and it's more like a prayer. It's something that people would come up with, because you can't have a God saying, well, I am the most merciful and everything, and now you need to say this is you are the bestest, but actually I am the bestest. So nothing in that thing makes sense. So the first chapter in the Quran proper is actually chapter number 2. And the first sentence, they call sentence, or the first thing that this God wants everybody, the whole world, every human being, the first thing that this God wants every human being to know is ALM. That is the first thing that you read in the Quran, because there are some letters in the Quran which nobody knows what they actually mean, what they are an aid of, if they have a function, if they do anything. They are just there. Nobody really has any clue how they arrived, when they arrived, whether they were already. I mean, I have never seen these in the older versions in the Quran, because if you go to the Islamic museums, you have very old manuscripts, and they tell you this is chapter so-and-so, sentence so-and-so. But they're not there. So there's no ALR in chapter 10. So the funny thing is, all of a sudden these pop up, and they were taken over into all the different versions of the Qurans that we have today. And the funny thing is, there is not a single Quran version today that actually is missing these, because I would have imagined these are the first things that people need to check up, because they're obviously nonsensical.
So now, what is the Arabic for, let's say, ALM? Because that's so just so that viewers know and I know.
Oh, this is Alif Lam Mim. This is just the way that you would say a K or an M is K and M, or H and M is the same thing. So it's Alif Lam Mim is just the way the letters of the alphabet are called.
Okay, so these are direct translation. Nobody can come along and say, oh, you're mistranslating this, or you've got to understand Arabic. These are the direct translations.
No, these are just letters. They're just Alif Lam Mim is the letter ALM. That's all there is. Alif is the A, Lam is L, and Mim is M. So there's nothing that you can do wrong there. This is what it actually says in the Quran. Anybody can go to chapter number 2, sentence number 1. I mean, my favorite one is 41:1, which is H and M. So maybe it's
QuranX.com. Bring that up, and we want chapter 41, verse 1. Go. Okay, let me share that quickly. Make that a bit bigger so people can see it. All right, let's share that. Should we know? There we go. And present to everybody.
And if you enter 41:1, then a question mark, and then all translations, you will see that some people write them out as Hamim and others just put HM. Now, click on roots.
Roots, where do I see that?
Next to the 41:1. You have roots and tafsirs.
Yes.
And there you have this. This is
this thing here.
These are the initials. It says 1 INL Quran initials. Ha Mim, H and M.
Okay, And what you're saying is that nobody has figured out what this means.
No,
Does
if you
it
go
actually
back
have
and
a
you
meaning?
go to because you can see the tafsirs as well. Here you have 6 tafsirs, probably starting with Al-Jalalain. Exactly. And there you have Hamim, God knows best what he means by these letters. Fuck knows what this is. Nobody knows what this is. Hamim, that is, he decreed everything, which was his. There's nothing there. Okay, now there's 2 things I want to mention about these things, because a guy came up 50 years ago, almost 50 years ago, and said, "Well, I know what these things are. They are the checksum holders." Because remember, Rashid Khalifa came up with the 19 miracle, which is propagated by Edith Yüksel nowadays. This is something where he said these letters serve a function. And the function is that if you leave them out, the 19 miracle no longer works. So you need them to complete the 19 miracle.
Oh, is that right?
I mean, of course it does, because if you take anything away, then it doesn't work anymore. So he says this is like a checksum, because if you leave them out, it doesn't work. Well, of course not. It's quite fun, quite stupid. Anyway, my favorite explanation, my suspicion is that these are just the initials of some scribes, because the people. Because in the later versions, you can see that they are located above the page which is being copied. So this is then some scribe who said, "Okay, I am ALR, I'm Ahmed, whatever." You can think of any kind of H is then a Hamid, and M is Mohammed, and blah blah blah. So you have the different initials for the people who copied the different sentences in the Quran. That's the only logical explanation.
But what you did say earlier was that if you go back and you look at the historical Qurans, or the did you say the scrolls, or whatever the case is?
Correct. Yeah,
none of this
earliest,
appears.
which is still the Hijazi, or the because you have the Kufic, you have the different type of scripts. And I showed this in the Quran in a video where you have the evolution of the Quran, of the way that it is written. The way that Arabic has changed, when all of a sudden in the 12th century, suddenly you start getting these diacritical markings, which you didn't have before. And suddenly they appear, and then you suddenly get all these single letter verses. I don't know, how can you call AL or HM a verse? I don't quite understand. And also, there are some Muslims who are adamant that the Quran contains exactly 6,235 verses. But they never tell you how they get there. Do they count an HM as a number, as a verse? Do they count the number 0 in that you have, except for chapter 9? It doesn't have it. The Bismillah that is in front of all the chapters. So it's quite funny.
But like you say, so just to be clear here, so what you've done here is put all these letters, and those numbers on the right are the verses that these letters appear in. Is it always at the very beginning of the verse, or the very, very first word or letters of the verse?
Yes.
Right. Okay. I mean, there's just so many of them there.
Yeah.
Well, if I get a chance, I will. I'll be down. Just for those who are interested, I'll be down at Speaker's Corner, because I am in London this week. So it's a rare chance for me to get down there, and I'll see if I can ask a few of the locals there if they have any idea. Because if God knows best, and if in fact nobody knows what this is meant to be, could it be that there's a hidden message in here that either contradicts or changes or says something, that may invalidate or supersede what's currently being said? How do we know what this stands for?
Yeah.
If you are a Muslim and you are watching this, and you think you have an answer, or you want to share some information, or challenge us, or update us, or educate us, then feel free to let me know in the comments. And obviously I can get you as a friend on the link. I mean, I haven't read the Bible for ages. I know you're not as well versed in the Bible, but as far as I know, there's nothing like this in the Bible, is there?
No, I've never heard of anything like this. No. No, but the Bible, I mean, if they would have had things like these, they would have corrected it. Because remember,
Yes,
they are not so adamant to keep every single letter in there the way that it was 100 years ago or so.
you're absolutely right. Saying that's in a sense, they think it's their strength, but it's also an Achilles heel. And because, like you say, the Christians just think the Bible is inspired. Well, modern Christians, let's just say, tend to believe, the ones that I've chatted to anyway, tend to believe the Bible is inspired. So it's not word for word, it's the general message. And if there's a few mistakes in there, if they're minor mistakes, well, that's just the scribes or somebody writing it down that got it in error. And for them, they can quite happily get around there. The Muslims don't have that. So they want the strength, but if there's a weakness, then of course, like you say, like this, it shows up. Because the Christians would have just gone, yeah, okay, that doesn't mean anything, we just dump that. It's got no meaning, it doesn't add anything. But if these guys are adamant that it supposedly appeared, but then you're also saying though that these didn't appear at a point somewhere in the past in history.
At least not in the ones that I saw lying in the museum.
Which museum were you in?
Oh, no, they have them all over.
Oh, so what is it?
I love the one in Doha. I mean, this is such a brilliant building, which is sitting in the middle of the lagoon, and it looks so great. It's so surreal, especially the way that they light it. So they are brilliant at hiring people, probably from the States, who are really, really good at putting different either oranges or purples or things like that. And it really looks great when you have the reflection of the water, and then this mixes with the reflection of the downtown city complexes, the high rises that you have there.
Yes.
It really looks brilliant.
So what did you actually see? Was it a scroll, or was it just an early version of a fully compiled Quran?
No, those don't exist. I mean, fully compiled Qurans only arrived, they're like from 10th century onwards. Those things are manuscripts. They're single pages that somebody has found, like the Sana documents or something like this. I mean, they have fantastic stuff. I actually put this, I can't remember where I put some of these things I put on a, I can't remember where I put them, whether it's Instagram or what is this one by Yahoo? Flickr. So some of these things I put there because they're really beautiful. I mean, they have things, they have like really intricate, like these sextants. It's really fantastic stuff that you have in those museums. It's really nice. And then they have pages and pages of manuscripts. Or even there was even a scroll, which is like a 3-meter long scroll, which is a Hajj certificate that a guy got like 600 years ago when he went on Hajj. You still got a scroll like this.
How long ago did you say?
A couple of hundred. I don't know. I can't remember the date. A couple of hundred years ago. I mean, these things. I mean, I can send you another one of these. This is just. I think this is fascinating. Okay, I think it's fascinating anyway.
It's definitely worth a look. What has been your response, or what responses have you had to these letters from Muslims? Because obviously I'm not hearing or seeing anything in the chat, and I can ask tomorrow if I remember to do it. But typically, have you had any responses, and if so, what are they?
Yeah, it's always the same thing. Well, unless you're a Quranist, and unless you're Eddie Buxel or one of those guys, then you say, well, Rashid Khalifa proved it, and he showed it, and he demonstrated it, and it's mathematical. But if you're not one of those, then you will just say Allah knows best.
Okay.
Nobody knows what they mean. Nobody knows what they are. They are just there to remind people of the greatness of this God, he is the only one who knows these things, and he will give you signs, and in due course we are going to be shown what they are actually all about. But at the moment, this has not been revealed to us yet. It's still limited. It's so complex that we have not been given the full knowledge of everything that is in the Quran. This is for future generations to find out.
Where are they picking that up from? They're just sucking us out of their thumb. I mean, is this book supposed to be easily intelligible by all human beings? Or is that not the case? Whenever I hear this, of course, they're quite happy down at the park to go, well, some verses are unambiguous and others are ambiguous. And I'm like, well, isn't this book supposed to be from God to human beings so that we can understand and presumably follow it? And you're saying some stuff is ambiguous that only scholars can realize. I mean, and I was thinking about it again today, and I'm coming up on the train because you've got time to think and it's quiet and so forth. And I'm like, they're just not critical of their own worldview. And we're talking about Muslims in general here, and particularly in Speaker's Corner. And they will critically, and I say in inverted commas, critically analyze Christians or atheists or any other worldview other than their own. But you just look at this stuff and you go, either just it sort of goes out of the mind so that they just don't think about it. Well, like you say, like Allah knows best. And that's not a response if your claim is that this is a book that was directly dictated, not just inspired, but dictated, over a period of time to Muhammad and perfectly preserved, which, anybody who's not a Muslim, I'm pretty sure would go, hang on a moment, that's virtually impossible. And then they'll bring their chain of narration and all this sort of stuff as if this makes human beings infallible, essentially. Or inerrant, sorry, not infallible, inerrant. So they cannot make a mistake. And so they've supposedly worked out this methodology which they can transmit this stuff that happened over 23 years, and it's perfectly preserved today. And I'm just like, I don't know how you could possibly convince me, I don't know if there's a way you could, that that's true. I mean, we just know that there's that sort of stuff, particularly over that amount of time. I mean, we've got videos now, and even when people watch videos, they can't get it right. So I don't know how you could possibly do that. But they're just not critical of their own worldview. So I don't know what goes on in the brain there with that sort of stuff. Maybe it's a case as well of some of the stuff they may not have heard of, or that for them it's like they're quite happy to sleep at night going, well, some of the verses are clear and some are ambiguous, and Allah knows best, and that's fine. Or we have to consult the scholars. And then I always ask them, well, is this book meant for the scholars or for all human beings? And then I get sort of ambiguous answers. Well, yes, the important stuff is for all human beings. Well, isn't it all important? Why have it in the book if it's not important or we can't understand it? I mean, if I want to give you a message, Stops, I'm not going to put in something that's encrypted. If I want you to get it and follow it, and for generations afterwards and the rest of humanity to follow. Rob, it's only those letters, not the verses. Well, I understand that's letters, Marshall. The point that I'm making is that why are they in there? And if nobody knows what they're there for, could it be that somebody's put something in the Quran that is either meaningless or that it's not something that's supposed to be in there? That's the problem you guys have. And if your claim is, well, we don't know and that's all fine, but yet you at the same time you're making a claim that this is a perfect book, perfectly preserved and dictated to Muhammad and to be followed by the rest of us, then there's a question mark. So if you drop the perfect thing and most Muslim problems, as we've said millions of times, would go away if you guys just accepted this was a message supposedly for people of the 7th century. I'll even grant you that he thought he was speaking to God or a messenger of God, and it was for the time of the 7th century. But today we know better, we're more critical, we know, we're not prepared to accept that sort of stuff on the scantest of, quote, evidence in inverted commas. So, yeah.
But it's so difficult for Muslims because they have this nonsense. They have so many sentences in the Quran which are absolutely meaningless. He covers by which he covers. What is that? How does that give you guidance? How does that tell you anything about anything? It doesn't.
What's that verse? Just so I can see
there's a sentence in the Quran which says he covers by which he covers. It doesn't make sense. And then you go and you say, okay, the very first sentence in the Quran, and then you get ALM. This is the first thing this God wants you to know. When you open the Quran and you say, okay, Bismillah, and you get everything, the first 7 sentences, and then chapter number 2, the first thing this God wants you to know is ALM. And this is supposed to get you into heaven? And this is supposed to give you the desired reward as long as you know ALM. What happens if ALM is missing out of the Quran? Are you going to miss out on heaven? This is
yeah.
And this is why this Rashid Khalifa went and said, okay, I put it through the computer. Nobody knows what he meant when he said he put it through the computer.
Who is he, by the way? I've heard the name, but I'm not that familiar with him.
He's the guy in Phoenix, in Tucson, Arizona.
He's a Muslim?
He became a Muslim, and then he went totally apeshit. He made a translation of the Quran where he found himself in the Quran, and he said, "You, Rashid, you have to do this. You are the one, you are the prophet who has to go and maintain this and make sure that people don't use the hadith but use only the Quran." And this, and so eventually, now there's two things that happened. Number one, he came into conflict with the law because then a lot of people saw him as something special, and he abused this power. And he had to admit that he had started fondling underage girls' breasts and things like that. So he was sent to jail. Then on top of that, he was not seen so, I don't know, so nicely by Muslims when he said, well, forget about all the hadiths and I am a new prophet and I am this. So he got killed by Muslims.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In the US?
Yeah.
There we go. The religion of peace again.
Yeah, of course. Anyway, and then this Edip Jigsaw goes around and he says, well, obviously you can see that this is a miracle, because what is the highway that leads to Tucson? Well, it's Highway 19. And what is the postal code where this masjid, where this mosque was? And what it was 54619. So there's a 19 somewhere in there. So he goes and does this typical patternicity. And he went to Michael Shermer. And he said, listen, you need to speak to me and you need to debate me. And Michael gave him the finger and said, listen, fuck off. What are you doing here? I don't need you here. So he said, no, we need to talk about this and maybe you will understand this one day. And Shermer said, no, get out. Just leave me alone. And he chucked him out. And then he went to David Silverman and said, I had a debate with Michael Shermer, a very interesting one. And he conned Silverman to talk to him. And he goes everywhere and he says, I had this debate with Carl Sagan. Now, what actually happened is he wrote a couple of lines in an email to Carl Sagan, and Carl Sagan told him to go and lump it. And he simply did not understand it. And he kept on pestering him. Yeah, I want to talk to you. I want to debate you. Maybe we will even co-author a book with you. And Sagan just told him to go and get lost. The same thing he did with Randy, the amazing Randy, James Randy, the guy from Florida. Yep. So he wrote him and said, come on, we need to talk about this. And Randy told him to go take a hike. So, he doesn't get anywhere with these things. But he's always going to people and telling them what a great debate he had and what a great concept the number 19 is. And he's been on the show here as well. And we just laughed about him. Yeah, we're talking about Edip Jigsaw. Yeah.
Right.
So just to summarize, we have some pieces in the Quran which are not really words. They're not sentences. They are single letters. Nobody knows where they came from. Nobody knows what they mean. The official interpretation is that Allah knows best, and we will receive knowledge in due course. But at the moment, we don't. Yeah, Paul Hardcastle. No, 19. The average age of the person dying in Vietnam was 19. There you go. So it's 19. And the cosmological constant is 19, according to Edip Jigsaw. So I asked him, yeah, but is that why we're living in a universe with 19 planets and a galaxy with 19 solar systems? Is that why that is? And he thought that I was being arrogant. Anyway, so this is the nonsense. Okay, so you have nonsensical letters in the Quran where nobody knows, and we're just faced with it. And you cannot get anything out of any Muslim. They will simply say Allah knows best, as though this is an explanation.
Yes, it's like a non-explanation. But hey, when we say, yeah, we're still working on things, and when we're investigating the world, oh, that's not good enough. But when so I'll keep that one as a reminder. I'll just bring that up when somebody tries that again.
I sent you, oh, by the way, Ibn Barak, nobody knows who that is. At least I don't. I think he's an Egyptian, and I think he makes a lot of sense. I sent you 2 files. One is this Hajj certificate.
Okay, let me bring that up so we can...
what was the other one I sent you? Oh, the sentences in the Quran, which say that this is the Mubin, the clear and easy to memorize and understand Quran.
Oh, okay, great. Let me share the screen here with that one, so you can see this. Let's just bring this up here. Oops, where are we?
Hey, said I had a debate with Reza Aslan. Now, come on, Professor? Well, I tweeted him and he blocked me. Oh, okay.
So there we go. That's the
Hajj certificate?
and this was given for somebody that had completed Hajj hundreds of
Yes.
years ago.
I mean,
And
this is
everybody,
magnificent.
yeah, it is. But everybody that completed the Hajj presumably got this, or did only certain people
I don't know.
get it?
I don't know if this was somebody special, if this was royalty or someone who did something special, and then this was awarded to this person. It doesn't say, because you can see on the bottom right-hand corner, there's a plaque which explains what this is, but it doesn't say anything about this.
Right. So you took this photo because you've obviously been to this museum. Right. Yeah. Okay. And is there can people decipher what it actually says on there?
I presume so.
Oh, okay.
But then I would have to take the one I took from the other direction, because this is upside down, if you want to read this. But I wanted people, actually, I don't know why this is cutting off, because I wanted to make people, because people doubted this. They said, this is not a Hajj certificate. And then I put the plaque in there together with this thing to show this is what it is. I mean, it's not my fault.
Why would they doubt that, though? Is there a problem with that?
I'm a non-Muslim. How can anything a non-Muslim tells them about Islam, how can that be right?
Yeah, but this is not contradicting anything, is it? It's just a Hajj certificate. Why would they have?
I don't know this. How do I know this? This can be anything.
Right.
This.
Right.
Why I'm not a Muslim? I have not read this. No.
Interesting.
Marshall, I want to know what these letters stand for so badly. Yeah. Well, we'll never know.
Right, there we go. There's the verses. A book whose verses are perfected and then presented in detail from one who is wise and acquainted. So run us through what is this now that we're looking at here?
These are sentences from the Quran that I just found. I don't even know if this is complete. This is just a couple of lines that you find in the Quran, which tells you what a wonderful, easy to understand book it is. So it shouldn't actually require any scholarly interpretation. It shouldn't need anything, because everything is very easy and clear.
Okay. A book of which the verses are made plain, an Arabic Quran for a people who know. So these are all Quranic verses telling you that the Quran is easy to.
Yeah,
indeed made the Quran easy
very
to
straightforward, plain Arabic.
Bring up one of them in case people think that you're just making stuff up. I don't, but let's just grab one. Give me one of those verses that I'll bring it. Just choose one and I'll bring it up.
Easy to understand. Remember, 54:17.
54:17. Okay, so if you're a doubter, then obviously we want to allay your doubts. So let me bring that up and share that one. Here we go. And verily, we have made the Quran easy to remember. We have facilitated its memorization and disposed it to serve as a source of remembrance. So is there anybody who is there anyone who remembers, I guess? Is there anyone who remember? Anyone who will be admonished by it and memorize it will be admonished by it and memorize it. In the interrogative here is intended as an imperative. In other words, memorize it and be admonished by it. None of God's scriptures is memorized by heart other than it, the Quran. Okay. And verily, we have made the Quran easy to remember. Is there anyone who will remember? That is, we have made the Quran easy to remember. If it were not so, tongues would not have been able to enunciate it. So will anyone take heed of this blessing? And there we go, folks. It says in the Quran that the Quran is easy to... Okay, but so it's easy to remember. Okay, but that's a difference.
Well, if you go to the words themselves, you will see that it's easy to understand and remember. So because you're reading the tafsirs at the moment.
Oh, am I? My apologies. The Let's go to the words. Yeah, sorry. I was on there. Here we go. And Pickthall. And in truth, we have made the Quran easy to remember, but is there any that remembereth? Sahih International. And we've certainly made the Quran easy for remembrance. So is there any? Okay, so, but there, Yusuf Ali, and indeed we have made the Quran easy to understand and remember. Then is there any who will receive admonition? And when they say for me, when I think of being admonished, it's like being told off. Is it used in the same context here?
No, it's the opposite.
So
I don't
when
quite
they're being
understand it,
admonished,
because you saw like, just now in the tafsir that you're supposed to remember, you're supposed to memorize the Quran, because there's a reward for those who do. I mean, if you're a Hafiz, for example, you get extra points for memorizing and reciting the Quran from, if you do it by heart.
Right. Okay, so Muslims can easily dismiss this and go, the word understand is not supposed to be there. It's easy to remember. So, because if it's, but again, something's easy to remember. I mean, I can remember poetry, but anybody can remember something. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I can remember certain things, but
wow, I thought I was the only one still alive who knows this.
No, we're all a dying breed, though, I think. But that doesn't mean that I can understand what it's saying. So I think let's just try one or two more of them, because I want to see where it says it. Because this one they could just dismiss as Yusuf Ali just inserting the word understand there. And so we don't accept that. It's easy to remember. And we know it's easy to... I'm playing devil's advocate, obviously, and they would say, oh, it's easy to remember because there's hundreds of thousands of people who remember it. So it's clear, demonstrable proof that it's easy to remember. But I would like to see if there's any more of those that are... I can bring up any... Is there any other one that I can... What is that, 54? Let's try 54.
Well, there's a couple. You just need to go to, I think, 22, 24. There's a couple there.
Okay, so again, he says, Yusuf Ali says, easy to understand, remember. The other two don't.
If you go to all translations, you can see it better. Just put question mark, all translations, one word equals Y.
Where do I type that in? At the top here?
After the 22?
Yeah.
Question mark?
You've obviously used this such a lot.
Yeah. All translations, one word equals Y.
So if anybody was under any doubt that Stops has been using this a lot, you don't have it any longer. Right, there we go. There's easy to understand. Let's just see how many times here understand comes up.
So you see the difference, the way that it's translated in different ways.
So we've got 4 of them, 4 out of X. See, what I'm again, just thinking, I've got to step, it's almost like chess, you've got to think a step ahead here, is they will go, oh, well, those were a few of the verses.
I appreciate what you're doing, yes.
No, nobody will disagree that it's
There's somebody else, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, I can't believe it.
Is there somebody else coming up with it?
AAA just wrote it down.
Let's try 5432.
Just in case somebody's listening, this is from Mary Poppins, okay? Oh, yes.
It's question mark, all translations. How did you find this out? I mean, does the site tell you to do this? All translations?
Rationalize it. Oh, Jesus, we've done so many things.
Okay, let's see now how many times the word understand comes up. Only one here. Oh, that's because I didn't. It's question mark, all translations. How do I spell translations? Yeah. My spelling is... Didn't get an A in spelling, that's for sure. Translations equals Y. There we go. Right, how many times now do we get the word understand? Oh, a couple more here. 6 times. Here we go. Is there anyone who would understand? We made the Quran easy to understand. Yusuf Ali. I mean, a lot of people accept Yusuf Ali. I normally use Yusuf Ali. It doesn't matter to me, but he seems to be one that most people accept.
I like the corpus normally, or the Sahih. They're the most difficult, but the most straight.
Sahih International, this one.
Yeah. Now, this is something that I always do, always, always, always. I go, when I pull up any one of these, the first thing that I do is go to the roots, so that I don't even get confused by the translations. I always go straight to the roots and look at the words individually so that I can get a feel for it. Then only do I go to the translations.
Yeah, I've got the word remembrance there.
Yeah, I noticed you, and all for all the wrong reasons. Hey.
Is that in the chat you're talking about now?
Yeah, because AAA is saying stops noticed me. Yeah, but because
The root now, I don't see the word understand anywhere here. Am I missing something?
It's a translation thing.
Oh, okay. Okay,
This is
so
exactly why I'm saying it. This is why I first go here, and I first get a feel for what it says. Then I go to the translations and look at the nuances.
right, okay. But at the moment, they could just dismiss this as there's not enough.
Oh, you can, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can go to what was it, 5424? I think
We've done that one already.
Same thing.
Yep. What other ones were there? I've done the 3 under the 54. What other ones were there?
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Hang on a moment. I've got them here.
I don't have it up anymore.
5440 is another one. So let's just look at 5440.
Same thing.
And if we type the word understand here, why is that thing? Because I copied the wrong one. Come on. I want this.
But the worst thing is that the Quran says, and there was also there, that it is in clear Arabic. Now, excuse me, can you show me an Arabic word, ALM? You can't. Can you go back to the one which says it's in clear Arabic? Because this is also repeated millions of times, but I think I saw it at least once.
Is that one of the ones that I've just been on, you mean?
Yeah.
So there's 5440.
No. In the screenshot I gave you.
Ah, okay. Yes, hang on a sec. Let's just bring that back up again. You can't swap straight from one screen to another. You've got to stop sharing and then reshare again by the look of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where was it? Here, 41.3.
Okay, let's have a look at 41.3.
And then 41.44. So 41.3 and 41.44 both tell you that it's supposed to be an Arabic Quran, which obviously it is not, because ALM is not Arabic.
Okay, so let's go in there. Have a look. So 43.1, did you say? No. What did you say it was? Hang on. It was 41.3. 41.3. There we go.
Sorry.
That's okay. You probably did say it correctly, and I was concentrating on other things. A book whereof, I'm just going to use Yusuf Ali or Sahih International. A book whose verses have been detailed in Arabic Quran for a people who know. Yusuf Ali, a book whereof the verses are explained in detail. A Quran in Arabic for people who understand.
And now apply that to ALM.
Yeah. Not possible. Can't be done. There's no detail there.
You just blacked out.
You have. I'm going to go to here. A book, again, here's a lot of different ones. A book whose verses have been distinguished and explained. A lucid discourse for people who understand. Well, how are you supposed to understand it?
Exactly.
You've got to have prior understanding. What of Arabic? I mean, I'm sure that's not what they mean. Again, it'd be useful if a Muslim was around to come and explain this to us, because it seems to be a complete mystery here.
Yeah, where's Saracen when you need him?
I'm not sure he'd give an explanation. Maybe he would. Who knows?
No, you can't. Nobody can. This is the whole point.
Somebody asked as well there, Stops. I've not been drinking, but thanks, Answer. I don't drink. So not anymore, let's put it that way. For many years now. So
I do. I need to stop because I've still got water here, and I need to stop now. It's
stop
Friday
drinking water.
evening. I can let my hair down.
Yes, well, I don't have any to let down, but yes, I understand the term. And so you need more debates before the Muslims kick you out like Sarah. Somebody was asking, how come you still do this? Isn't it boring after all these years? Or why do you still interrogate Islam?
I sometimes think it's time to find a new hobby, okay? But then it's so rewarding. It's so there are so many things. I mean, if some of the messages that I get where people say, with your like factual approach, with non-emotional approach, you are doing so much to rattle the cage, and this is why. I mean, there are people who are doing a lot worse stuff than I am, but it's me who gets blocked. It's me who gets all sorts of funny things, because it seems that I'm touching a nerve somewhere where I don't really know what it is. But a lot of people tell me that because I am showing one-on-one the problems in the Quran, I'm showing one-on-one the problems that Islam poses for people, apparently this starts people thinking, and this is exactly what I'm trying to do. And then I think to myself, shit, am I really going to leave this? And then what am I going to do? Fly drones? I mean, it's nice, but it's, this is something, I have a whole spectrum of things that I like doing. This is just one of them.
Yeah, agreed. So, same for me. But I do think, I mean, match this against other things. I do other things as well, but this potentially could be life-changing for certain people. Like you say, you get a few messages. I've had a few, nowhere near as many as you have, where people have started to think critically. And we know of a few people who are even perhaps watching now who are, thinking more critically than they ever did before. Otherwise, they just kept regurgitating what they'd heard before, and now they're not doing that to the same degree. And so, I enjoy flying drones and doing other bits and pieces as well, but I think there is a level of satisfaction when you can interrogate something that has, if this was all wonderful and it was the best way to live, well, then we'd probably, even if we didn't think it was true, we'd probably go, oh, well, it's beneficial to mankind, even if we can't prove that it's true. But it's, in fact, as far as I'm concerned, the exact opposite. It's detrimental to mankind. And for me, that's one of the big reasons. And, I don't know that I would ever stop doing it in the sense. I mean, to be honest, if somebody said to me tomorrow, Rob, I'll give you £1 million, focus your entire attention, boom, everything else I'll put aside, and I will study this stuff like I would go to university type stuff to study this. And so unfortunately I can't. It's more of a hobby, so I have to, have people like yourself that have taken more of that time to do. But I think, and the other thing is as well, it's not diminishing, unfortunately, mostly by birth rate, of course, and a small amount of conversions, but it's not diminishing. And I think that's problematic. If it was a small sect on an island somewhere, or they were, more and more people were, well, I do think that people are, with the internet and with the younger generations now, they are starting to become a bit more skeptical. And that's just anecdotal from some of the people that I've heard. I think there's an impact being made. I don't know if you feel the same, where, you'd reach people that you'd never speak to, that are in different countries, you'd never expect. It might just be the right time for them to hear a message that gets them to start thinking instead of just following along, without questioning things. So.
Yeah. And yes, the answer is yes. I've got a lot of people who said they are looking at Islam in a different way. Now, there's a whole range of reactions that I get. I get people who are saying, damn you, you made me question, all the way to people who are saying, I look at myself now and I think, how could I possibly ever have believed this? Because the way that you showed me that the ocean don't meet is such a ridiculous, stupid lie. And the way that you demonstrated it is exactly the way that spoke to me, that made me think about this and realize that there is nothing in the Quran that is worthwhile. And then you think, wow, I'm very proud of that, I must admit. That people start thinking and
rightly so.
believing it blindly.
And I think that is, and it is something, and I used to be, interesting enough, it's a pattern I used to have. So when I had some success, or people told me, not in this sphere necessarily, but in other areas in life, people said, yeah, Rob, you've done well. I used to kind of feel bad about taking that. I don't anymore. That was a psychological block that I had. And fortunately for you, it sounds like you don't have that. And it is something to be proud of. And if you get people to think critically, and they can come up with a good argument and go, hey, do you know what? I have thought critically. Here's a good argument. And you and I went, wow, that is pretty good. I'm going to have to go away and think about it. That would be, I've just never heard anybody come back and say that in the sense of like defending, their faith, so to speak. So, yes, you've been doing this how long now, roughly speaking?
What is this debunking?
Yes, and talking about the Quran and learning it, and more or less, how many years now?
It's exactly 10 years.
Really?
Because 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
That's when it all started. Because 2006 is when we moved to Dubai. And then from there, it was Kabul. And then it was 2007 when this Kabul incident happened. I think it was, or 2008 or something like that. And that's what started. Actually, it's a little bit different. I started thinking about gods when my brother joined. Do you know this Prince guy in Singapore?
Is that young fellow that got arrested or was jailed for freedom of speech and insulting?
No. That's Amos Lee. No, that's somebody else. No. Joseph Prince is a missionary who runs a church, which is it's called a prosperous. I can't remember. A prosper missionary.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you donate $100, you're going to get 1,000 back. So you give him 10,000, and he's going to give you 100,000 back. And this caught my brother somehow. And
really?
Yeah.
I can think of one word for that: PONZI.
Well, that's it. The thing is that he actually became a platinum member, because he then and his wife as well, then they got positions in the church, and they got public recognition, and everybody said, wow, but he didn't realize that he was buying this. And then, I went to the church with him in Kale, and I said to him, you are happy clappies. You are standing here and you are just going and they're talking absolute shit. Don't you see that they are conning you? And he said, no, and this is giving us freedom, and we are the only ones who know this. Look at the Muslims around us. This is not true. Look, there's the mosque, then there you have a temple, because Malaysia was still a lot more liberal a couple of years ago. And then I started looking at Christianity, and I started reading the Bible. And I went pretty far deep down. I actually went into the Hebrew origins to see whether this thing with when God said, if you eat from this fruit, then you surely shall die. I found out that a repetition of a word increases its value, things like that. And I learned these things, and I found out that God never even spoke to Eve. This was interesting. But then I went into Dubai and then into Kabul. And then when my boss came to me and said, listen, do you know that there are scientific miracles in the Quran? I freaked. And then when the Taliban attacked the hotel, I thought, why do these people hate me so much? Because I saw the hatred in this guy's eye, okay? Because I only saw one guy. The one guy blew himself up, and then I was stupid enough to go into the lobby to check what was happening, because I thought I was totally secure and safe. And I saw these guys running in with the AK-47s, and this one guy, he was, I don't know how far, 6-7 meters away from me, and I saw the hatred in his eyes. And he then turned towards me, and luckily I had a huge thick pillar in between him and me, and they were running on their way down to the gym area, the spa area. So they ignored me because they wanted to kill everybody in the spa area, which they did. So I was, this close, and I saw
Did they
this
fire at you
hatred.
while you
So,
hit? Did he actually take shots at you?
yeah.
Oh.
But he just hit the pillar because I ducked behind the pillar.
Mm.
And I was actually shit scared because I thought if he changes course and he runs towards me, I've got nowhere to go.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's easy. But they shouted at each other, and then they went for the spa area, which was the opposite direction. So that was lucky.
Mm.
So anyway, this then prompted me those two things because I couldn't understand. Number one, how can a Muslim like my boss, the CEO of one of the biggest companies on the planet, how can he come to me and say to me, there are miracles in the Quran which are of a scientific nature? This didn't make sense to me. And then on the other hand, I have a Muslim who is so full of hatred just because I don't believe what he believes. And I was fascinated by this. And that's when I started looking at this. And then that's when I started I dropped the Bible and Christianity and went into Islam. And then I got picked up by Rationalizer. And then we started chatting, but then it got to him, and then he had to stop. And then Klingshaw got in, and this is how the whole thing sort of materialized. And then there was a Greek Muslim who made fun of me, and this is the first time that I made a video, and this is how it just started.
And you obviously responded to the Greek Muslim.
Yep.
What was his response after that?
Well, actually, you know what is quite funny? It turns out that he was a gay. And then he had to stop completely because now he was being criticized by the Muslims for being gay.
Yeah.
But he was the one, I mean, he was quite stupid because he ran around and put a bottle. He went into a Christian meeting, took a water bottle and said, "This is poison. I dare you to drink it." Because in the Bible it says in Mark, blah, 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 or Luke, I don't know, that if you believe in this Jesus character, then you are oblivious to pain and poison and things like that. So
yes,
you can be by snakes and Anyway, so he not realizing that the hadiths say the same thing about Muslims. So this is how foolish he was.
Interesting. And you've got a comment in the chat here. Obviously not necessarily a fan, but I guess you're more used to it than me. Somebody says they're 10 years. What an effing loser. So obviously a response to your when you looked into this for the last 10 years.
Yeah, how time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, exactly.
But it took me a very short time to find out that there are no scientific miracles in the Quran. It didn't take me 10 years. And it's not like some Muslims who go all their lives without realizing it.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, to me, I've been doing it for a year, but over a year, nowhere near as long as you or as knowledgeable as you are and so forth. I mean, for me, that was just nonsense almost from the word go. The moment I heard this, I mean, hang on a moment. And I quickly looked into it. It took me 5 or 10 minutes. I'm like, this is nonsense. This is complete nonsense. You're trying to make things fit, retrofit them to, the latest scientific. And, most of the Muslims who are regulars down there avoid this now as far as they possibly can. So, of course,
science can be impressed by a Quran when you open it and the first sentence that jumps at you is ALM. I mean, everything after that must be nonsense. And then people tell you, well, you need to read the Quran because it's the word of God and this is giving you guidance. And the first word you get is ALM. What the hell does that do to you? How does anybody, how can you wear blinkers, which are so efficient as to remove this from sight?
But that's what happens, of course. It's a psychological condition, isn't it? If you want to believe something and a member of my family does it, I'll give you an example, and this just goes to the psychological makeup of the human mind, especially one that wants to hold on to a particular belief. So I didn't know this, and one day I was reading something on Sam Harris's blog, and he pointed to a study that he'd done that talked about fire. He called it the fire analogy or something like that, relating to religion and people talk, their thinking and so forth. And it turns out that fire burning, a wood burning fire is extremely poisonous. More so, if you have a wood burning fire in your home, it is far more poisonous than if you drove the car in, closed all the windows, and put the car on idle and let the car run, and the carbon monoxide coming out of the exhaust. It's far more poisonous than that, because and as most of us know, I'm assuming, when people are in a fire, they don't die from physically being burned or from the heat. They die from asphyxiation normally, or from breathing in the smoke.
Yeah.
But the natural fires out there that we've been sitting around for thousands of years to warm ourselves and to give light and to scare animals away is actually extremely poisonous. And very small particles that get breathed in, they bypass our normal filters, because obviously we've got sort of evolutionary filters that do filter out some of the toxic things in the air. But some of these particles are very, very small, and they bypass that. They get carried for miles, and they're extremely poisonous. Now, if you read that and you accepted it and you wanted to believe what was true, you would immediately stop burning wood fires, or any fire that burns that sort of material. Gas fires are fine. Those are pretty fine. But a member of my family goes, nope, I love fires. They've got that lovely warm feeling. I can gaze into it. It's a hypnotic feeling. And I'm saying, well, it's poisonous. No, I don't. It's almost like I don't care. You've now given me information I didn't want. I was quite happy, thank you very much, before you told me they were poisonous. I'm quite happy in my ignorance. And now that you told me I'm now informed, I'm just going to simply ignore it, because I like the fire. And this was the analogy, and it's out there available for people to see, in case they think, again, this is just being made up. But this is the thing. People have got a belief system or an ideology or whatever it is that they seem ticks most of the boxes. But now like you've done, and me to a far smaller degree than you, we question this. And so maybe a tick is not in a box, but they go, well, that's not that important. ALM, well, who cares? They will in their mind rationalize some way that is totally fine, and it's still the word of God, and it's 100% real. What do you do with that sort of a mind? It's the mind is not operating efficiently at that moment in time.
And this is the thing: belief and faith. Are you reading the chat?
Not at the moment. I will do so.
Okay. There was a very interesting comment by Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
Because he says, everybody has beliefs, and I believe that I'm going to get my master's. And this is an excellent point. Ah, goodness. If you are convinced of something, then this is your belief. And whether it is true or not doesn't matter. You need to be convinced of it, and then it is your belief. And that you are justified in having this belief. And if you get your master's, either you do or you don't, then you have either verified it or falsified it. And then you have made it either a justified belief or not. But if you are unable to verify or falsify it, then it becomes a faith. And this is what you need to understand. So yes, I have millions of beliefs. And some of them may be even not justified. But if somebody shows me they're not justified, I'll change my mind. But if I will find that I have a belief that is not falsifiable and not verifiable, I will immediately drop it, because it means that I have faith in this, which is something that is absolutely useless, and that is the difference. So yeah, I wish people would understand this. It's so easy, actually.
I would agree with you to a large degree. The only thing I might slightly change for me personally would be that there's some beliefs we have, and again, we'd have to examine them, which we hold, like you've said, either that we can't defend with good reasons. It's just that we haven't heard outright bad reasons for it at this moment in time. So we're holding on to certain beliefs, whatever that might be.
Exactly.
But it could also be that, it depends how important it is in life. So if I believe, I don't know, that Goodyear have got the best tires, and somebody says to me, no, it's Michelin tires, but Michelin are twice the price, unless there was scientific evidence that could show this. Now, if there weren't that, and it was just an opinion among people, I may or may not believe that. I might still believe that Goodyear are the better tires, or I could just slightly modify my belief and just say, I believe Goodyear tires are the best for me, not necessarily the best tires. But again, going back to what sort of Marshall said there, and kind of echoing what you said is, people get convinced. That's how you get a belief. You don't just, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum. And so neither stops nor I for £1 billion could believe Islam is true and actually believe it. We could profess to believe it, but if you said to me, Rob, and you could somehow hook me up to some kind of sophisticated machine that could accurately show whether what I uttered was in fact a belief that I held or not, I don't know that I could not fool myself. I'd have to actually be convinced. So even if my life depended on it, I couldn't fool a machine or pretend. So you get convinced for either good or bad reasons. And so you don't just take on a belief. It's not something that's like you can pick up or you can buy or it happens, immediately type of thing, generally speaking. So with Marshall believing, that's like a positive thought. Yes, I believe I will get my master's. But that, using the word belief there, is slightly different to I believe that the earth goes around the sun. We've got evidence for that, for example. Or I believe that the air is made of oxygen and hydrogen. But I believe I think so. He's slightly using the word differently than I would. In the sense, if he's trying to make it sound as if it's the same in believing in God or having, propositional beliefs, it's a bit different, I think, when you use the word believe in that way. But you are correct that either he gets the masters or he doesn't get the masters. And once that period of time comes, let's say it's a 3-year course or whatever, at the end of those 3 years, either he's got it or he hasn't. And at that point, either the belief is now been justified or it isn't. But he doesn't have good reason. Well, he may have good reasons, I suppose, or he will have good reasons to think he'll get it, i.e. I'm studying all the time or whatever the case is, or I'm not studying or whatever may be going on. But I would probably not use the word belief in that sense, in the same sense that somebody says, I believe in God or I believe in Muhammad or Islam or whatever the case is. So
we need to pack up. We're boring people. They're starting to talk about football.
Well, we can do an early one. If there's, I just want to check something here very quickly.
Are there any questions regarding the single letter sentences? Is there any question regarding Quran being Arabic correct and blah, blah, blah? Anything along those lines?
If you have any questions on anything that we've mentioned here, now's your opportunity. Otherwise, we may, have a shorter session today. So if you're a viewer and you want to ask a question or you have a comment on anything that we've talked about here, particularly on the single verses, or anything else that we have mentioned, now's your opportunity. Okay, so somebody's asking there, what exactly is the linguistic miracle of the Quran? Okay, stop. So now that may go on for another hour, but go ahead. Maybe you can do a short synopsis of that one.
It is a claim that there is something special about the language used in the Quran. The favorite one is that bring a chapter like it, which gets interpreted that there is a chapter in the Quran which consists of 3 lines, which is using 42 rhetorical devices. And you need to find now a way of mimicking that by coming up with a sentence or a chapter which is like the Quran. And that is the linguistic miracle. That human beings are not capable of reproducing what and how it says something in the Quran.
Well, that's kind of what you said. I mean, he's asking language. I thought it was the structure of the Quran.
No, it's the language. There is no structure in the Quran.
So maybe what he's thinking about is the numeric miracle, maybe, or?
Well, there's a guy who says that there is a U-shaped structure in chapter 2, for example, where the first chapter is the first sentence or the first area is linked to the last one, and then in the middle you have the word middle. There's different claims as to what you can read into the various sectors, but if you look at them in any level of detail, you find immediately that this is wrong. This does not follow. Yeah, I mean, Sources wrote an article. This is exactly this. They're following. Was it my last video or second last video? I did exactly that. I showed how this is nonsense.
Somebody said he emailed Noam Chomsky about this a week ago. He basically said it was bullshit. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I guess you're talking about the linguistic miracle of the Quran there, Rafe. So,
There was
but
a
I mean,
thread on Reddit, linguistic, where they said the whole linguistic claim is subjective. No, it's nonsensical. Because, okay, number one, there are 5 different claims of this type in the Quran. They say, bring a book, bring a chapter, bring anything, bring a chapter, bring 10 chapters. So which is it? So number one, you don't really know what you're supposed to do. Number two, it says like the Quran. What is like the Quran? Do you bring something with including all the mistakes, not including all the mistakes? Do you bring something only consisting of A, L, M, H, M, and blah, blah, blah? Or do you go for the actual sentences? Does it have to be in ancient Quranic Arabic? You don't know. What is like the Quran? It is not defined. So right from the word go, you don't know what the hell you're supposed to do. Then the next thing is that unfortunately it says you now need to give it to your friends or whatever, your people, to go and examine this. It doesn't say who these people are. So what they are suddenly saying is it needs to be in Quranic Arabic, and it needs to be Arabic scholars who will go and agree that this is possible and true. The next thing is, it says in the Quran that you are not able to do it. So right from the word go, you don't know what to do, you don't know what to bring, and if you should try something, you are told, well, you're not going to do it anyway. And the last thing is, if you do, you're going to go to hell.
right.
That is the linguistic miracle of the Quran.
Now, just for interest, since you're on that point, and I know we've covered it before. I don't know whether we covered it on the show in particular, dedicated a show towards it. But the numeric.
Yes. We've done this to great detail, to great depth,
okay.
when we had hundreds of people and we asked people, Muslims, is this from the Quran, yes or no? And they could not tell. But those were the days when Hassan was still here, who was translating Quranic Arabic. So he was using ancient old Arabic, and we made up sentences, and he came up with this wonderful poetic Arabic, which sounds really great. And people were not able to distinguish it, the same way as people came up with the sentences when they said these are the sentences, and it turns out this was the Bible, or the other way around. Yeah.
Yes. So again, I suppose when somebody in the chat was talking about subjective, meaning that the criteria is subjective. Like people are just making up a criteria to say, bring something like it, because there's no criteria in the Quran, is there? As to what that must be. It's just a very generalistic statement. And now people have gone, oh, well, this looks good. So I'm going to call this particular thing in this verse X. It's the hopscotch methodology, or whatever you want to call it. So, when you bring a Quranic verse, when you're going to try and bring a verse, you need to incorporate hopscotch in there. Otherwise, it's not going to be as good as, coming from Allah. So I guess that's what they mean by subjective. So all these linguistic markers are just something that people have made up. And obviously, the more you make up, the more difficult it is, or the criteria builds upon itself. And then supposedly the more difficult it is for a human to bring us another verse, because now you've got these 40 odd things that somebody's made up that you've got to measure it against.
Yeah. And Pull-Ups is making a very good point. I actually forgot about this, because in the Quran itself, of course, you have the devil who is fooling Muhammad into believing that this is actually from God. So the devil actually fulfilled everything.
Right. Yeah. There is something, maybe we'll keep it for the next show. I've actually got so maybe that whet the appetite for next week, possibly. I've got and it was forwarded to me, or I saw it somewhere. I've got the pamphlet from ISIS, which is actually very professionally done. I mean, I've got a PDF here of it, and perhaps we can talk about it. And they explain, just on this, it's kind of a bit of a side note, but they explain why they're at war with, the thing is why we hate you and why we want to fight you. I will just show the beginning here, so maybe this can be something that we can do at some point, because obviously people go, oh well, ISIS is not really Islamic, etc. Let me just share this here very briefly as an appetite whetter, and maybe we can do a
Jinn and Tonic Show. We did this a couple of shows ago. Abu had a huge, he went and researched this and had a huge presentation about Jinn and Tonic Show.
Okay, well, this isn't specifically, well, I mean, this may be related in a way, but it's not specifically related in that same way. So this thing, Diablo, how do I make it a bit smaller? So this thing is the ISIS propaganda pamphlet. And I mean, look how this is done. And, you know, it's professionally, whoever the people are, they've obviously got money here to do this. But the one that we'll focus on perhaps for the next show is why we hate you and why we want to fight you. And they actually go into, at the bottom here, further down, the exact reasons why. Because a lot of people say, of course, Muslims and some of their non-Muslim, you know, cohorts, no, it's because, you know, the West has invaded their lands and taken everything from them. And so it's just a fight against the West per se, because the West attacked first. And here are, you know, here are the guys themselves with a, you know, as I say, a fairly well put together newsletter or whatever you want to call it, explaining exactly why they do it. So that might be of interest just to hear from these extremists why they
just go
hate
through
us.
this. Excellent. Yeah.
So we'll do that next time. Have you got a hadith of the day at all? Again, I'm just looking to see if there's anything else.
Give me 10 seconds.
Yeah, sure. Have a look. I'll just look in the chat here. You are full of hate, somebody says. Your heart is sealed. You are full of hate. Let me talk on that for a moment there. I'm guessing that's a Muslim, this fella here, Rida Sukhol. Radia Sukhol. We hear this, I hear this a lot. No, your fault because you're very wrong. I hear this a lot. I don't know if anybody else does. And I think this is particularly egregious from an intellectually honest standpoint. I hear people saying, non-Muslims and Muslims and some of their non-Muslim sort of cohorts, those that support Muslims in a sense, saying, hey, and I saw it again today. There was a video of, I just happened to come across it as I was just scrolling through, quickly listened to a little bit of it. There was the Christian Lizzie from Speaker's Corner and her cohort, and then Bob the Builder came down, and they were at outside some mosque, and they were chatting to some people there, and there's a couple of Muslims that were sort of having a discussion with them, etc. And you could hear one of the guys in the background. He was it almost sounded like he was nervous, but he kept talking like nonstop, like really quickly. And what do you say about this? And what do you say about that? And he like didn't give them a chance to respond. I'm like, I don't know if the guy's going to have a heart attack in a moment, but he really needs to calm down a little bit. But then you hear him saying, oh, but these are just hate preachers. They just preach hate. And I, you know, this sort of rhetoric is intellectually dishonest and inaccurate. And this commenter's kind of done the same thing. You've got hate. Well, that's a very strong word, and I would suggest you really look up what hate actually is. I don't hate Muslims, and I don't even hate Islam, but I do think that it's detrimental and destructive to the world, and particularly if we want to progress as the human race. But I don't hate it. That's a very negative, low emotion, and my belief is, which again, I don't have particularly scientific evidence that I could muster at the moment, but my belief is that somebody that lives with a lot of hate will manifest that potentially in their body in some way. So this whole term of hate or Islamophobia or whatever, as soon as you go there, this is becoming now an emotional, you know, response. You're no longer having an intellectual discussion. You're no longer having an honest discussion. You're now just throwing around a few emotional terms. So this claim about hate preachers, I mean, I could say the same about Islam. This is just hate, you know. So I would suggest that this gets dropped, or, you know, or you accept that the same thing can be said of you, because somebody else questioning your religion, just like you question Christianity or secularism or whatever else it is, somebody could turn around and say the same. Now, we are intellectually honest. We don't go down the emotional route. So I'm going to point it out if I hear this, and obviously this commenter did it, and I heard it again in this other video. So just don't expect to be taken seriously when you start throwing around Islamophobia or hate preacher or you hate Islam or whatever the case is.
Racism.
Yeah, or you're racist. I mean, as if Islam is a race. You know, there's people from every religion and every race or denomination around that's part of Islam, unfortunately. So obviously you can't be racist. But again, these are just words. It's like throwing shit and hoping a bit of it sticks. And, you know, just intellect, you can't take somebody like that serious. That's just intellectually dishonest. I mean, you know, Lizzie and whatever, they can say what they like. I mean, the Muslims come down to Speaker's Corner. Nobody goes, unless they actually preach it, unless somebody's, again, being dishonest. You know, I don't hear people going around to the Muslims going, oh, you are hate preachers. I mean, unless you are actually preaching hate, if you're like a Amjad Chowdhury or whatever, that literally does preach hate, then that's an accurate statement. But for the rest of them, they think this emotional hate preacher, whatever the case is, it doesn't constitute an argument. And for those of us who care about what's true or likely true and want an intellectually honest discussion, that's just a juvenile response. So there you go. Over to you, Stops.
Indeed, there is a story about the fly that lands in your drink. On one wing, it's poisonous. It's got poison. The other one, the antidote, because Allah, for every poison that Allah gives you, He provides an antidote. So if a fly falls into your drink, make sure that you dip it into the drink so that both wings go into the drink, so that the antidote can cancel out the poison. That is the hadith of the fly. Okay, I have selected from Abu Dawood 139, narrated Abdullah ibn Masud. A deputation of the Jinn came to the... Sorry.
The what? Sorry?
A deputation of the Jinn came to the Prophet.
What is that?
The Jinn are the demons.
No, the Jinn, but what's a deputation? Is that like a deputy? Is that like...
Yeah, exactly. They had
like a junior Jinn or something.
Made from smokeless fire, come to Muhammad and say, "O Muhammad, forbid your community to cleanse themselves with bone or dung or charcoal, for in them Allah has provided sustenance for us." So the Prophet forbade them to do so.
What?
Because the Jinn are made from fire, from bones and dung and charcoal, so you can't clean yourself with the food of the Jinn. Oh, shit. Oh, boy. Okay. I'm sorry for that.
Excuse me. One can only laugh on occasions. I think most Muslims have no clue what their books really say. They've cherry-picked certain things, or they've heard, you know, cherry-picked verses that sound really good. Every time somebody gets converted, I go, you know, they can do what they like, but the critical thinking is just not operational. So whenever somebody takes the Shahada, and if you go and watch, well, on the rare occasions when I've seen it, you can just tell that these are not... Mostly they're not intellectual, but there are some intellectuals that have made the conversion. But the critical thinking is just, it's like they've gone into a hypnotic state almost, and it's just like they're very suggestive and they follow along. And, you know, if they were exposed to things like that, or if most Muslims were, and you suddenly force them to engage their critical thinking, there would be a lot of a mentor of mine used to say, a bit of a civil war going on in your head about how on earth this can be the case. Somebody's asking something there, or they, if you've got a question, then yes, typing in my name there will get your attention, because it highlights. So if you have a question, Ron MC, then feel free to post that. We're just about at the end there. The hadith of the day is normally the end of the show, so we've had a bit of a shorter one today, but I don't think Stops and I are necessarily unhappy about that. So last moment here. Stops, I want to thank you again for... Sorry, say that again?
We don't artificially need to elongate this.
No, exactly. Agreed. Rob, what do you think? Okay, now they're asking me a question. What do you think of Muhammad Tawhid? I thought you named the show after them, Rob. Who did I name the show after?
The Jinn.
Oh, well, that wasn't mine, by the way. That's a long-standing thing, and again, Stops would give you the history of the show. So I'm just a custodian currently of the show. It definitely goes back to Stops. And was it before your time as well, Stops, or were you right there in the beginning?
It was Klingshaw's idea originally. and then it was Kling, Rationalizer, and who else was there? Then Hassan came in. I can't even remember who was there. Then we had Ali. I don't even remember what happened to him. Then Hassan dropped out. Rationalizer dropped out. Then Klingshaw dropped out, and then it was only me, and I dropped out a year ago due to job.
Mm-hmm. And thankfully, you still are here when opportunity arises, which is fortunately most often. And
yeah,
so
there was a very intense time until things quietened down, and I got into the swing of things, and I could find the shortcuts, and then I didn't have to be like so present there all the time. But in the beginning, it was absolutely impossible. Yeah, Kling, we don't know what happened to Kling. Somebody got to him. I mean, Kling was always a bit impressionable, okay? So he went from Christianity to Buddhism to Islam to all sorts of things. Then he went to varsity, and then somebody said to him, no, this was not an academic display of his knowledge if he went and did the Jinn and Tonic Show and he did his videos. So he closed everything down.
Everybody to their own, but that seems, as you say, a bit impressionable. But again, if he's swapped from different religions and so forth, a bit like the fellow down at Speaker's Corner, whatever his name is. Somebody's asking me, what do I think of Muhammad Tawhid? You'd have to be a bit more specific. I mean, in terms of a person, I think he's a bit of a thuggish character, like his buddy Hamid, and the two of them, I consider them like Tweedledum and Tweedledee. They wander around there, perfectly displaying, in my view, the Dunning-Kruger effect, giving off an air of certainty when they have no expertise in almost anything that they open their mouth to talk about. And yet same with Ali Dawa and many of the others, and yet seem to, exude this air of confidence, which they're completely unjustified in having. But more than that, I think him and Tawhid are just more of thuggish characters. Now, not every Muslim is, Ali Dawa, bless him, is not the brightest spark, but he's not a thug. He's not there to, attack people or get offended or want to fight. Whereas Tawhid and his buddy, they can easily be pushed. You could push their buttons if you so wanted to. So from a psychological point of view, they're on a much lower psychological level. Easy to push their buttons. They're much easier, get physical or in some other way try to respond, because they're physically incapable of responding at a higher level. And so, you get those sort of people. So he's not somebody that, like him and Tawhid, I've had that one conversation or a couple of ones where he sort of accused me and then had to apologize and so on, and Tawhid was standing there. And that video's on my channel as well. And when I told him how sorrow was the greatest gift, I mean, this was just something that blew his mind. He just like laughed and walked off. So I don't take them particularly seriously. They're not somebody that I would want to seek out to have a conversation. I'd probably walk away feeling less intelligent than before I started having the conversation. For me, that's not the point. So, yes, I don't rate them as anything other than, I mean, if they disappeared from Speaker's Corner, that would be good for Speaker's Corner in general. And I wouldn't say that necessarily about every single Muslim. So, yes, I don't have a particularly positive view of Muhammad Tawhid, to answer your question. So there we go. Stops, I want to thank you very much for coming on, as always. You're a great panelist. And we'll have some kind of a title talking about ISIS and what they believe based on their own pamphlets, not just something that I've brought up or Islamophobic or whatever other nonsense people, some small subset of people want to throw at us. So we'll do that for next week. Thank you very much for those verses. I will ask at Speaker's Corner tomorrow, on Sunday, and ask them what is their view on these sort of things. And quite probably, like you say, they'll probably say something like Allah knows best or whatever the case is, and then I will.
Well, we did this with Ali Dawa.
Did we?
He ran away.
Oh,
you remember with the remote control with Ike?
Ah, yes, yeah, that's right, yeah. But again, Ike was very, very blunt, so he sort of put everybody off. He made you look like you were going around the houses. He was just right in there. So, yeah, I remember that.
The best way.
Yes, that can sometimes come through all the nonsense.
Tied in, tied out. That's the way it goes.
Yes, exactly. Yes, most people won't get that reference.
Okay, guys. Cheers. See
God.
you next week.
Good night. Thank you so much, Stops. Thank you to everybody, the viewers, and everybody in the chat. We will see you this time next week. I will be at Speaker's Corner, so hopefully next week over the period of time, and I'll spread it out. We'll have a few videos of conversations in Speaker's Corner. Thanks, everybody, and see you again next week. Take care.
Rob, looking forward to the new video.
Yes, we'll see what we can get. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye.